I'm very curious. Actually, one of the things I wonder about is who are making these security decisions and what age were they, and what experience level had they had in a world where we were facing real threats that we had lived through, and some people, who they weren't there. They were kids, or they weren't even born. It's it's like us looking at Pearl Harbor for our parents and grandparents and stuff. Because I think it looks like common sense for some of us who've been through those years to go, why would you not have that here? It doesn't need to be that complicated, but apparently it does in some ways.
It's boy, you hit it right on the head with this too. It's a lack of reps
Yeah, it's
in
reps.
specific
Yeah,
areas.
yeah,
And think about this. So here's the most base, and I'm good friends with a lot of people that do this groundwork security stuff, and even a layman like me, which is what we talk about on our show all the time is deep empathy.
yeah.
Empathy from the standpoint of, and it's not empathy. Remember, empathy is not agreeing with someone. Empathy is not being compassionate. Empathy is just understanding the optic. And here's what you need. Here's what they failed to do in New Orleans is have empathy.
Mhm.
In other words, if I wanted to kill a lot of people, which is my job to prevent, how would I do it?
Yeah.
How would I get around and that's exactly what the terrorist did. He looked and he said, "Here's how I'm going to beat this system," and he beat it.
Anybody
And
could
that's
look at it and do that. I mean,
I know, and that's what they
yeah,
didn't do to prevent it.
yeah, and that's the shocking part of it. That's the part I just can't get over. It's like, I'm not a terrorist. If I were to but I might look for these things because we've lived through that era. So like your eyes kind of look around going, what could possibly happen here? And like I would, if I were walking down that street, I'd be like, this is kind of weird. There's not real secure barriers for this. But it's, yeah, there's just so many things in this. Let's talk for a moment about the actual characters themselves. I mean, these are people who were not from the Middle East. I mean, we have, one who I believe appears to be Arab in nature, but he's an American. He grew up American. He's 100%. I mean, look at his real estate video that was out recently. I mean, you look at that, and the last thing you're going to think is this guy's going to go do a freaking terrorist attack. You look at his picture and you go, oh, he resembles 9/11. And it's like, and then he's a realtor, and he's not at all what you think in that thing. But obviously had a lot of difficulties, divorced twice, but he had kids. But obviously, things did not work out well here. Is this your typical type terrorist that's been radicalized, or is this someone who had like a mental break and really just kind of went down a dark path really quick?
Yeah, I think you hit it right there. So what we see in all these situations where someone is gets to the point where their problem solving skills goes to murder and taking lives and violence,
Hmm.
it's an escalation of challenging situations that they seem to have a inability to problem solve through.
Yeah,
And again, when you flip that switch and you see the world through the optic of I'm a victim and the world's out to get me and
wound
there's no other
collector.
choice. This was a 100% wound collector, victim mentality, and this is how they decide to solve their problem. And when you have someone that becomes vulnerable psychologically to outside input,
Hmm.
and that's where radicalization can come in. That radicalization is the same thing. It's cult. It's a cult mentality. This is how the cults take over too. They get love bombed. Or in this case, might have been solution bomb. We have a solution for you. Go do this, and you'll find your salvation in the afterlife, or whatever bill of goods they were selling this guy. Because even his brother, again, the data points as today are saying that he was they if I understood what I read first on this was they grew up Christian.
Yeah,
And that's and again, when you look at his military service in the army, it looked like a good service
it
record.
was.
He
It
was
was a
doing good
great
and righteous
service
things.
record.
Again, challenging situations through life that everyone deals with. Okay, you have some divorce, you have some financial issues, but it looks like he was attempting to problem solve the entire time until but again, this is what I think from our standpoint today of what we know in the from the socials and media, we don't have the full picture here. There was
Yeah,
something tragic and there was something that happened in there that we're
yeah.
not seeing that gave that spiked
But
out of the norm.
it does seem like amateur hour in terms of terrorists when yeah, you got a vehicle through there. You got a truck through because of security lapses, which were pretty evident, which you would, if I guess you knew the city and you kind of knew how the city works, it's like they're not going to have this fixed by that thing, and there's your way in if you decide you want to do it. But the fact that, I mean, he had all these other IEDs he was supposedly going to set off and all this stuff. It's like none of it happened. I mean, fairly amateur hour. The other guy in Vegas had fireworks in the back of his truck. I mean, it was like, what are you planning here? It's like wannabe terrorism. Certainly does some damage and gets a lot of attention, and obviously a huge loss of life in New Orleans. But it did not seem to be what I think we would, I guess, normally consider to be like a radicalized terrorist in terms of 9/11 coming into our country with a
Right.
bigger plan. This seems, and maybe we'll find out there's a few more people involved. I don't know, but it does seem kind of like we're the terrorist club and we're pretending we're part of this.
It's this the sad truth of both of these is that, especially with the one in Vegas, he, from what we know right now, he shot himself in the head first before the truck blew off.
Hmm.
And you look at his service record, very distinguished service record. And in
Yeah.
that case, you really, in both cases, really, anytime you're dealing with individuals like this that do the mass killings, I think what I saw the stat on is 95 to 99% are suicidal to begin with.
Hmm.
And I think what we're dealing here is two veterans, so I mean, just think about this. I think the veteran mental health issue is going to leak into this at some point as well. That's especially with
Yeah.
the Vegas one. The New Orleans one, I think again, pure conjecture. He had a gap in that mental capacity of problem solving, being suicidal, and in comes a solution through some ISIS propaganda crap.
Yeah.
Um, and he wound up killing a lot of other people along the way, as well as himself. I mean, that was a suicide run. There's
Yeah.
no doubt it's a
Yeah.
suicide run. I mean, you don't do what he did without knowing you're going to die.
Yeah. It's obviously all those side questions are there no matter what. Um, as of right now, there's a lot of questions about are these two connected? There is overlapping time at Fort Bragg. Um, that's what we have. We have that, and they use the same app to get the vehicles through Turo, and obviously the events happened on the same day. Um, that's as of our recording what we know. What are your thoughts on these being related? Is this just a lot of weird coincidences at one time for a country that's really kind of at a burning point?
I'm gonna go against what I normally do in these cases. When I first saw the timing of the two, I am not a coincidence guy. I don't
Yeah,
normally when things line up, they're connected in some way. But I don't think they were there. Here's the linkage I think there. I think the linkage we're seeing is the only linkage we know. They
yeah,
happen to be in the army. They happen to serve at the same places. They might have used the same app because maybe that's what that everyone at the army
yeah.
got
It can
briefed on
seem
using to do.
reasonable that you would be doing these things, and
Yeah.
yet Fort Bragg is not like a little village. I mean, it's a
I'm
city.
actually I'm
Yeah.
actually broadcasting from that area right now.
So
I'm
there
in
you go.
Fayetteville,
Yeah,
Virginia. I'm in
yeah,
Fayetteville, North Carolina.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And so I think when you have individuals that served in similar places, similar times, they're going to learn similar ways of doing things. And I think the timing just I think is as of right now, I think it is coincidental because their motivations do seem to be very different. You have one guy that is using a cyber truck, and apparently voted for Trump in a very clear suicide by shooting himself first before he blows
mhm,
up the truck, not trying to at least he's not driving that truck through a mass crowd, and then you have
mhm.
another one with an ISIS flag on the back of the truck driving through a crowd.
Yeah,
So the the intent seems to be a bit different, although
yeah.
the end result, killing themselves, I think is the congruence.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's I am curious though if we're gonna find more connections in
Yeah,
some
me
way,
too.
shape, or form. Just yeah, there's a lot of more I'm sure we're gonna be talking about in the following weeks on this one. Hey, thanks for checking out the video. Be sure to follow us wherever you download podcasts, and especially Apple Podcasts, where you can get advanced episode and premium content on our premium channel right there. Also, be sure to follow us on social media so you don't miss any breaking updates on the stories that matter to you most. We're on TikTok, X, Instagram, Facebook. Just search Hidden Killers Podcast with Tony Bruschi, and you'll find us right there. Again, thanks for watching.